Hi guys. Yeah. So I'm Autumn Wilson. I have a background in interior design, and now I work in retail design. Um, Interior design has been something that I've loved to do, and when I was younger and in college, just was hoping that I could have a career in something that would be fun, and always different, I would say, just because design is always different. And so I do a lot more in retail than residential, which was in my past. But retail is a lot more fun. There's a lot more, I would say, codes. There's a lot more things that are a little more troubling or things that you have to jump through when it comes to hoops, but it keeps you on your toes.
Not enabled. So these things happen. So please bear with me. All right. So we're gonna do well, we just had Autumn introduce. So I'm this is the first time you're hearing my voice since I just enabled my microphone. So yeah, but thank you for that introduction. So I wanted to ask you a little bit of, what kind of software do you use day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. The big one we use right now is we do Revit. Revit is really key. It's kind of our base software that we use. It's where we build our models. It's where we start any of our layouts, making sure we have things pretty to scale. And then from there we move into SketchUp. And so SketchUp, I would say, is our second top software that we use. Once we get into SketchUp, that usually gets into conceptual design on either if we do storefronts, if we're doing, front of house, lobbies. We really work in SketchUp so we can visualize within our team, be able to give them some ideas because not everyone can visualize it just by materials and being able to say, oh yeah, this is going to be wood, this is going to be a vinyl. So being able to model that is really, really important. And then after that, we jump into Lumion. And that's where we kind of get into when we coordinate outside. So any of like landlords or anything like that that needs more detail or more of a realistic look, we try to jump into render or sorry, not rendering, into Lumion to do some renderings so that we can give them a really good design and a render for them to be able to see.
Yeah, which is actually kind of surprising because I typically am more experienced with going from SketchUp side into Revit, and we do more concepts first, and then we generally go into Revit for overall construction
Hmm.
document phase, which is a workflow that I'm more used to. And I'm surprised to hear that you
Yeah.
start from Revit and actually go into SketchUp to do concepts. But which is also an aspect that I kind of touched on in some case of project. What's the reason why you start on Revit, by the way? Because you mentioned, yes,
Yeah.
I think we still do concepts in SketchUp to visualize things, and I think it is really useful to get people who's not used to drawing sometimes and to iron
Hmm.
out a few things that are not necessarily working or visible on plans or elevations to see things in 3D. I think it's really helpful to do on SketchUp. But my question
Yeah.
is, why do you start off on Revit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. So Revit really, we do it more for like consistency, and it's also a quicker base model for us. But consistency, I would say, is like the key part, especially with our lobbies. We're able to get more accurate dimensions, specific. Sometimes we get really tight on some of our square footage that we keep for lobbies, and so Revit really keeps us with, I would say, our consistent, maybe standard square footage that we want for a lobby. And then once we bring it into SketchUp, we have the base and we start bringing more of our components that we have already made before. So it's more of a quick process. Revit's easier for us to just quickly model a base for us.
Right. I think it is, and also I was that was sort of a leading question because I am aware of your work process, but I think there's a huge play of square footages, which is important in terms of understanding how big your spaces are and how your projects are laid out correctly. And I think those informations are a lot easier to achieve on Revit side. And whilst in SketchUp side, things are, I would say, in terms of creating geometry, you can do things more, I guess, more complex geometries are easier to create. However, on Revit, you can often just do wall, floor, and then you already have a box to go with. So I think in sort of quick succession of creating areas to calculate and generate your plans from, I think it's much easier to go on the Revit. And
Mhm.
I think that's also what you meant by saying, yeah, you're just trying to generate those information quickly. Therefore, you need things done in Revit to generate a plan quickly to work on. And then once those are just kind of agreed upon, either from landlord or your tenant or your other architects or designers, you can agree on all different parties and just kind of move forward. And then whilst that is just kind of cooking, you work on the overall conceptual aspects to how to dress all of these things up, right? And that's the
Mhm.
fun part, isn't it?
Mhm. Yes, yeah, that's the part I always look forward to. We start when we start. Don't get me wrong, I love Revit, but when we get to be more creative and bring in more colors and materials and more of an architectural material design aspect to either a storefront or to the interior, it's a lot more fun. I would say I favor that part.
Well, sounds like you do have a favorite though, then.
No, no, I didn't mean to say. Yes.
Yeah, but you gotta something that I always say is you just gotta pick the right tool for the task, and
Yeah.
I whilst you may favor personally to something more, you may have like a favorite tool, but sometimes it just means you got to pick up tool that is suitable for your job. So I understand that,
Yeah.
and today's session we just kind of titled to say talk about let's talk Lumion and SketchUp. So,
Yeah.
we kind of touched on the Revit a little bit, but our main focus is going to be on SketchUp and also Lumion, which is not actually something that I talk about so often on my channel. And this is partially because Lumion has not been in my main workflow. I do use Lumion, but I haven't use it as much as some of other softwares that I have mentioned, such as the one that I mentioned last week, Enscape. So that has been a little bit of out of my approach, but because although we kind of work together, I know your workflows may be slightly different from mine, and I think that's when Lumion kind of comes into play. Can I ask why you stick to Lumion and what's the sort of the biggest benefit you see?
Yeah, Lumion, I would say, I have to say I'm a little biased just because I'm always in Lumion, but I don't work as much in Inkscape. So, maybe there's some things in Inkscape that you can do that you can also do in Lumion. But Lumion specifically, kind of for my workflow and just how quickly we work when we do our projects. Going from SketchUp to Lumion is just a quick flow for us. It's a quick phase in the sense of all the phases that we have in our projects. And so going from SketchUp into Lumion, the way we do some of our renderings or some of our conceptual looks for some of our team is we can do quick renders that actually look really good, really realistic. It gets what we need when we want to articulate some design feature. And it does it quickly so that we don't have to spend a lot of time on really making something very beautiful or something that's very specific when it comes to lighting, when it comes to materials. I see it I see it as like almost really easy to manipulate some of your materials very quickly versus, again, in Inkscape, I don't want to compare it, but I feel like when I tried Inkscape a long time ago, it felt a little more complicated than when I jumped into Lumion. Lumion, I feel like is maybe more beginner friendly, from my opinion.
I see. I see. Well, everyone has a different background, and
Yeah,
sometimes you also have to use whatever your office or your team offers in terms of workflow. So
yeah,
you gotta get into sort of used to using it in some of the teams. So some people might be aware of both, and we can always compare them. But
yeah.
today, I think we've got to just kind of learn what Lumion has to offer in terms of workflow, and we're interested in learning your workflow specifically. So I think it's really suitable to just kind of talk about or show us a little bit of your
Yeah.
workflow. Um, uh, what version of Lumion are you currently using?
I believe I'm in 2024. Yeah.
I
Version
see.
2024. Yep.
I see. I see. And I think I started using it, back in the days, I even like 10 years ago. So I may have used it for quite some time, and I am
Mhm.
not aware of the latest and greatest features as much as what I used to, since
Okay.
I don't use it in daily. So I'm open for you to kind of surprise me and show me some of your new ways of using it. So yeah,
Okay.
do you mind showing your screen a little bit and
Yeah. Of
walking us through
course.
your workflow?
Yeah, of course. I think starting maybe in SketchUp because that's usually where we start, and then we can just kind of go into how I end up getting into Lumion.
Sure.
All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I figured just starting with a simple base model. This is just a residential home. So really, when we start our projects, we will say this was started in Revit, and then we import this into SketchUp, and then we start adding materials. So materials are the big things for, say, either our landlords or tenants, anybody within like our team that when it comes to like branding, and we want to show them just what we're thinking as a design. We come in and we'll put like our base materials in here, make sure we get some of our details. If there's any kind of trim or base work that we would want to show, or if say if it's a landlord and we're replacing a base, or recently we've replaced a sconce, and so I had to kind of show them what sconce we're replacing so that we can get approval for that. Just adding those in is super important, and it's a lot easier to just kind of do those base minimal components here in SketchUp. And so once you kind of get those in, making sure you have windows. A lot of times we do a lot of storefront glazing systems. I would say that's also probably another reason why Revit is easier to start in, is when you're doing storefront systems. It's quicker to be able to add those in than sometimes when we do it in SketchUp. We find that we have to build them a lot.
Hmm.
There might be an easier way, but we've like us as a team, we've noticed that Revit's a little bit easier to put any kind of storefront system. And
Yes,
we
systematical creation
Mhm.
of certain things is set up already on Revit side, whereas you've got to create push pull every single mullions and everything, so it's a little bit harder. Something I noticed is you're showcasing a residential model, whilst I'm aware you work more on retail. So I take it that this is more of a imaginary projects to showcase few things. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah,
I
this is
caught you
just
right there.
yes, I wanted to, I thought about showing a project, but then I was like,
We all understand that
yeah,
aspect. Not a
yes,
problem.
yes, starting with a conceptual,
Yeah.
imaginary, this is the house I eventually want in my life.
Why not? Okay, well
Yeah,
then that is a lifelong or at least short while project of yours, and
yes.
you've managed to put sconces on there to just kind of showcase workflow. So I like that.
Yeah. Yes, yes. I'm putting it in the air. Hopefully it'll come true
Yes,
sooner than I'm expecting.
I like that.
But yeah, so we're starting here making sure we'll just kind of pretend like our windows are some of the storefront systems, but making sure we have windows in here, making sure there's glass. So once we have materials in there, sometimes when we import it, it imports either a color. I feel like a lot of times we see it as yellow or blue, and then you'll just have to come in here and change your materials as you need them to be and what you need them to be changed to.
Hmm.
Um, you also have the opportunity to do it in Lumion, so it's not as important. It's just easier, sometimes quicker when you're importing if you have the time to just do it in SketchUp. But yeah, so most of our just getting our main components in Revit or in SketchUp is key here for the base model. When we're doing any of our signage, this is the part to do, or the phase to do our signage and bring in any of our signs that we want to put in here. We typically have like standard signs that like we've already pre-made, so we can copy and paste it from a master schedule that we have. So that's also what keeps it pretty quick too.
Do
Is
you
like,
keep that in the SketchUp format or Revit format?
no, we keep it in SketchUp. So we
Mm.
have like our own file that has, it's almost like a warehouse, but within the platform of SketchUp. So if you were to look at, this without the house here, we would just have lines of our components when it comes to our signage. So any of our signs, if it's a linear sign or if it's the stacked sign, if we have like a reception desk, we have like 2 to 3 versions of a reception
Like the
desk.
variations.
Um,
Yep.
mhm.
So you have your
Yep.
own
And
set of like a library for or like a 3D warehouse, if you will,
yep.
as where you keep all the assets and you just drag and drop basically into your model.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. And so that's usually what keeps us pretty efficient and quick with our modeling. And just because, when you have a standard with design or a brand, you can be a little more efficient, more quicker with your designs and your time once you have like your own, I guess I would say your own warehouse, like you mentioned, which makes it a lot easier. Okay. So just kind of like say, we built this model. We put the windows in, we have sconces in here. You've placed them where you want to place them. Based on like either tenant guidelines, any kind of guidelines that we get, make sure everything follows the guidelines that either the landlord provides us. And then we would obviously save this and then we would import it into Lumion. Would you like me to show you how to import it, or do you want
Yeah,
me to just
sure.
jump into? Okay.
Go ahead and show us. Yes, please.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So if you jump into, actually, we'll just act like that house isn't even there. We'll add another one in here.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. So you want to come down here. So when you open up Lumion, it'll ask you to open a new space or a new environment, and then it'll open up into this environment here. And what you want to do is you want to be in your imported models down here. When you're in place, it's usually for any kind of component that you want to add in there. And so if you ever look, you're like, I'm trying to import a model that I had, but I can't find it. It's usually, you can't find it up here. It's usually because you're not in the imported model tab down here if you're in place. If you're in the imported tab and you still don't see it, it's probably because you're still in select. So just making sure you're on place. You'll be able to see where you can import a new model up here.
I love how you just touched on everything that I had a mistake of, done a mistake of.
You made a mistake. Did you? I guess I used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, my goodness, where is the model? Like, where can I import this model?
Well, that's why we've got
And
to
it's
have
always,
people who actually use this day to day and who learn from zero to where we are now
yeah,
to talk about it.
yes, yes. I cannot tell you how many times I've done that, and I still occasionally do it when I'm in the rhythm and I just don't think about it. It
Mhm.
does catch me off guard sometimes still.
Yep.
Okay. So when you get into that, you'll go into your files and you'll find where your SketchUp model is saved, because you can just import your SketchUp model right directly into here. And we'll do the home one. Okay. Something that's important that we normally try to make sure we click in this page when we're importing it is we want to import our edges and lines. And this is just to help give you more crisp lines. I say my personal opinion is it's more of a realistic look as well. It gives it the edges that you really need for your model. So if you have a lot of details on like a storefront, this is super helpful versus it being almost like a seamless. Sometimes you just get lost on your edges that you won't be able to see sometimes.
Yeah, this was in, I guess, repeated conversation, especially when we're talking about SketchUp. So
Mhm.
import edges and lines are a little bit more important to define the geometry, because often when we were working on conceptual side, not all the materials has been ironed out and we don't have every single material applied to our model, and often
Mhm.
having a bit more definition on your geometry is really really helpful, even if it's like a little
Mhm.
joint that is on your concrete, or if it's just on your wall, or if it is a slight angled faces that are meeting each other. You've got to have a bit of an edge to highlight those geometric changes, plane changes,
Mhm.
and having that is really really useful. And technically what you'll see there is an ambient occlusion, which is sort of a shadowing on those edges where things kind of meet each other in the real physical world. But in 3D spaces, that app sometimes is just not available. On SketchUp, they started doing it not long ago. But
Mhm.
once you turn off those edges or outlines on SketchUp side, also it is kind of hard to detect those geometric changes. Therefore, having some of those are useful. I think also in cases of like a bigger building, if you have a huge amount of storefront or curtain wall type of things, and when they're not like caught with all the edges and lines on all of those facets of the curtain wall, it's hard to read. Whereas if you start to have those edges, then it reads really well. So I can
Yeah.
certainly add to that. I actually had a question as you bring it in. There's a couple of options for your starting the backgrounds for your model. There's like a plains and
Yeah.
a forest. And what's your favorite? Do you always start on plains usually?
Yeah, we just do the simple. I guess this one's probably called the planes, but it's just a simple. We don't do anything too detailed on the around. Typically, if we want to kind of have, I would say, either a city or the environment around the space that we're currently conceptually designing, we will build it in SketchUp, and it would be very simple builds, so nothing too detailed, because then it starts to overload our models and make them really, really slow. And then we would have to kind of move I would say, I'll go to the settings here so we can see this. Our editor quality, we would have to minimize the quality a bit to be able to work quicker than what we normally do, which then makes it a little harder to see kind of our details that we're trying to see more quickly. So we try to keep them as simple when it comes to our components or the around environment
I like
for
that
those.
because oftentimes we may put in so much detail then our machines just can't really chew through as well. And our focus here is getting the concepts correct and get a sort of an agreement between all the stakeholders and parties who need to make
Yep.
decisions. And having a realistic looking forest or realistic type of buildings around your project is not really necessary to do. So, whilst it is fun to place your project into a deep forest and have all the grass grow around you, but yeah, it may not be worth your time or your machine's
Yeah.
resource, right?
Yes, yeah. And it's also sometimes it gets kind of distracting too with the reviewers, whoever's reviewing it, whoever's needing to approve it. Um, Having so much kind of distracts from your design, that you're really trying to be the focal point, and be the approval. Because again, we work so quickly, we want approval as fast as we can, so we don't want as much distraction
Yep,
around
you can't
the
have
design.
butterflies flying around in your model.
Yeah,
I've had that
yeah.
before in Lumion. So yeah, that's something.
And I mean, it's cool. It is really cool, and it's really fun to see that you can do something so realistic on a computer or a software. But specifically for like my career and just the job that we're doing, it's important to try to get straight to the point. But those are really fun things for anything we do outside or like a hobby. It's a lot of fun to utilize.
Yeah, I did want to shout out of a chat that we just received. So, AZY Design Studio, he said his name is Ahmed, and he's been watching the videos of my channel for quite some time as a student. So, he's excited to see what Lumion has these days because he's used Lumion in the past. So, yeah,
Okay,
thank you for joining, Ahmed, and we'll look to have you continued in the show today.
perfect.
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry for interruption.
No, no worries, no worries. Let me go back. Let me import this because I
Hmm.
X'd out of it. This is where we were.
Yep.
Okay, so a typical thing that kind of I run into sometimes is when after I do import lines, sometimes I'm not able to click OK. It's not letting me, and that typically is because you're either duplicating or renaming or naming your model the same as a model that you already have in there. So since I've already imported this model named home, it's not going to let me re-import it unless I change that name, with some way, and then it'll go back to like a green light for me so that I can go ahead and import it.
And the update of the model process is separate from importing, like
Like up,
relinking.
yes, yeah. So that
Mhm.
will be, yeah, that would be separate. So once you come in, you'll see your model kind of hanging out here, and you're able to just kind of click anywhere you want it to be. It's a lot easier for us when we use just your typical environment plane when there's no trees, no nothing. Like we're not super particular where we put it.
Yep.
But let me X out of that, because if you place it, I'm gonna act like we placed this one.
Yep. We're good.
Perfect. Okay. So once we're in, normally a lot of our just retail stores where there's a lot of like pavement or concrete, so we don't really see grass. So the grass isn't really important for us either, but we have it here, so we'll keep it. But we'll focus on materials. A lot of times when we're trying to do unique materials within Lumion and say SketchUp, or maybe I can't find a material like very quickly that I'm wanting to just conceptually show, I can go in here and I can start playing with materials. And so you have a materials tab, which is the second one next to your home tab, or your, I would say, content library tab. You can come in here and you can click on your materials. An important thing for materials is when you're in your SketchUp model, you want to make sure if you have different materials in your SketchUp that they are tagged separately or differently from a material. So say this material down here, which is the cladding stucco, if I was to paint in SketchUp this, the cladding stucco, and this one, and then come to Lumion once I imported it and tried to change both of these, it's not going to allow me to, because it's technically tagged as the same material. So the cladding, say if my brick was cladding, it would highlight the brick as well and change that material.
Mm-hmm.
So since all this cladding down here is actually highlighting all around my windows, all around every single base, because that's the same material that I tagged from SketchUp. So if I click on it, I'll be able to change all of that. So in this entire model, whatever I've tagged or painted with cladding stucco chipboard is going to change on what I change it to here. So, and then you have a huge abundance of materials here that you'll be able to pick from. We don't usually go too detailed with it. It's more of a quick, just wanting to find something that maybe resembles either a concrete or an existing base. So if like we wanted to do this gray or a dark gray, we'll, quickly go ahead and paint it this. And then it changed all of them. So even though I clicked here, it changed all of those materials that were tagged as the cladding stucco.
And typically, because I'm aware that you have like a store standard or like project standard,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine you have a handful of materials that you repeatedly use. Do you favoritize them or keep them separate, or do you make some of own, or just go and keep on using the same ones that you have used in the past and just keep applying the same?
Yeah, I would say typically we usually apply the same. So we, again, with a brand that's trying to be more known, consistency is huge for us. And so like one of our main materials is a black brake metal, which is typically, it's pretty easy to just show a black brake metal. You don't really need to see the texture, just because if a landlord's reviewing it, or any kind of just reviewer in general reviewing, they typically know what the material is going to be once you call out in either a PDF you're showing them, if it's brake metal or not. But normally what we can do, so say if I forgot to bring it in here, but I'm, needing to change this, I can change this color of it if I need to. Let's see, go in here. Let me go back to new settings. Oh no. Set here. Or sorry, my apologies. Bring in the texture of the color that you would want to
Mm-hmm.
bring in. And so that's what we would normally do, is either it's going to be a texture of black. We can find like a black panel, which we have like I would say a folder of just a couple panels that we normally use. It's hard to really pinpoint like metal panels. I would say it's pretty standard to just do a black if we do black. Sometimes we'll do different colors. If it's a gradient color, we'll have either we call them print files or vector files that we'll bring in. And then we'll bring those in here, because sometimes our models, it just is easier to bring in the material within Lumion if it
Right.
doesn't look as good in SketchUp.
Yeah.
So, say this one we'll just keep as that kind of like almost concrete, the brick going in, and then there's a lot of bricks that we can use. We don't use brick. We don't use brick a lot. But it's just the materials in Lumion just look obviously a lot more realistic than what we have in SketchUp. So if I was to go back to SketchUp and just use maybe a um,
Well, there it was like a stone, and then it's like brought in as a brick on Lumion side.
mhm. Yes, this was changed. It was after. So if I was to
I see.
go click here, yeah, I'll go back to what it was before. So if I go click here, so it's just the imported material from SketchUp.
Mm-hmm.
This is what was imported. So it's kind of blurry. It looks more of like a screenshot to me when I'm looking at it. It's not really giving as much shadow as I'm wanting. And it's almost blurry, like the material that was in SketchUp is it's a little blurry for me. So if I wanted to get a little closer, I'd come here and I'd look at,
A bit more defined texture.
yeah, yep. And like if, none of this is, really hitting the spot or, is really what I'm envisioning, again, we would go back to importing a material and that's when we kind of get into Photoshop a little bit where we'll find a pattern that maybe has like a small relief or something that can be duplicated quite a bit. And then we'll manipulate it slightly in Photoshop to just get it to where it feels like a consistent and a cohesive pattern of whatever material that we'll need. We'll
Mm-hmm.
save it as a PNG and then we would import it in here. And then we would play with the colors a little bit.
I see. I see.
Yeah. But
What
typically
happens
oh, go
when
ahead.
you so let's say you've now changed both the trim and the wall to something that is more suitable for you. Now, we can talk about, well, perhaps if you go back to SketchUp and manipulated, let's say either the porch or your material a little bit, how does it impact once you have updated your model on a Lumion side?
So you're saying like as if I come back in here and if I was to change this, if I changed it in Lumion, like to this stone,
Mm-hmm.
and I come here and save this, maybe just save that, or let me edit this a bit here. If we want to make it a little bit darker of a brick, we can make it a little bit darker. Save it. What I would need to do is we'll go back, get out of here, go back to your content library tab, and then you'll be in your import models, but on your select, not your place, would be your select. And it would basically highlight your model and you'll
And then
come up here
update,
and yep,
re-import.
it'll open, yep, and you'll click over here to re-import. Sometimes, occasionally, what happens is in our files, our say our SketchUp file kind of gets lost, or maybe it's either oversaved or not saved properly. This will show up like almost like a little folder with like an exclamation where it shows like it basically you'll need to reconnect or retag the file that you've imported here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have you click Alt for if you're on a Windows, my apologies. If you're on a Windows, it's Alt for me. And then it'll show like the little and you can re-import and select and go back to that folder so that you can re-import that same model so that you're not messing up the placement of
Yeah.
where your
Correct
model
correct
is. If you
pathing for the file.
correct, yeah. But since this one's already still connected, I can just reload it and it'll take it a second to reload.
Yeah, from what I remember is all the material changing is the same because you've already replaced those things, so it'll stay the same. But if the same
Yep.
material has been applied in different places, now since the model is updated, it's gonna update all of that, right?
Well, so see, I just updated here. So since I updated that one, since I overlaid it in Lumion, it's not changing that
Right,
texture in here.
right.
Yeah,
But if you
so it'll
had
stay with
applied the
what you.
same material, the stone on perhaps on the roof, or that a little bit of that's on the left side of that house model, then it would have replaced it with your overlaid or new texture.
Yes,
Hmm.
exactly. Yep. Yeah. So see, I just took off that material. I overlaid it, and it is now the updated
The
material that we
darker, yep,
just kind of. Yep. Yep.
yep. So it maintains
Uh,
sort of the linkage between what changed to
mhm.
what changed to what.
Yep. And another thing that I've always done, and I used to have I used to have a sticky note on my computer to to always save. It told me to always save SketchUp before you jump back into Lumion. Because what would happen is I would jump back into Lumion without saving SketchUp with design changes, and I will reload my Lumion. And the bigger your Lumion, or the bigger your SketchUp model gets, the longer your Lumion takes to reload the model. And if like it's gotten to a point where I've waited 20 minutes for my model to reload just because of how big and how many components or materials. And then it kind of hurts a bit, because if you don't save it, it's not going to pick up the changes.
And then
So
you gotta
you
wait
have
that
to,
again. Yeah.
and then yes, yeah. So then you have to go back, save it, and then reload it again. So then you wait that another 20 minutes again. That's happened a lot. I've gotten better. I've removed the sticky note. I don't need the sticky note
Okay,
anymore.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so that's, we start to work in materials and finding our materials. Having a library of your materials it's helpful if you're trying to be faster. It really helps if you have a consistent brand. So if you have a brick that you really like, or even if you find a brick PNG or a JPEG that you really like, that's like a really high quality photo of whatever material you're using, it's always good to just have a material library of those so that you can easily pull those in instead of take time to search for them as you're doing projects.
Yeah, and I think knowing your brand a little bit, you have a consistent type of species of wood or stains of wood
Yep.
that you consistently use. So keeping that library, and then you can just consistently paint that on specific project here on this wall, on that wall, and I think you can just continue using that throughout, right?
Yep, exactly. And so kind of the next step for just my workflow and kind of what we do is, once I, get through setting up my facade and the materials, and if I needed any more details like on trim that maybe I didn't catch in Revit, but I want to add that could be a little quicker here, because sometimes, yes, push and pull is a little harder when you're doing walls, but small details around your trim and everything it's a little quicker to do a push pull. Once we get those in here, we go to our photo tab over to the left here, and we'll start setting up our views that we would want to start rendering and see. This is like a guideline for me a lot of times, because I have specific angles that I like to work in. And if I was to go back to build, it pulls me to that view that I saved. And so if I was kind of lost into my model here and I want to go back to that view that I was in the first place, if I go in here and click on my view, which, let me start, I guess I'm jumping around here, I apologize. If you want to start a view, you'll come down here and hover over your camera box, and you'll click store camera, and it'll take that perspective and that photo of where you're standing, so that you can keep that. And so once I did that to the front, and I want to go back to the front, so I'll click it and it'll bring me right back to the front. And that's almost like a quick, just popping right back where I need to go if I'm needing to go places quickly, so that if I'm like lost, if it's a massive project or a specific angle that I think works really well for
Your
design
storefront or specific
yeah.
angle of your lobby.
Yep. Yeah. It's a lot quicker for us. So we have those in here, and I'll start working on my angles to be able to show you, or to be able to quickly just work fast for it. But this is also where we get into like our rendering. So our lighting, getting into what we kind of like. Typically for us, again, we work very fast. We do work on quite a few projects, and we typically want to try to get as many renderings done as much or as fast as possible. And so up here to the top left, you can click on this. This one says day, but it'll be like your rendering, like your select styles, like your rendering styles. A lot of times you can make your custom style, which you can go in and you can start adding your different effects. And once you get into it a lot more, you'll start finding your style a little bit, where you'll want a sun, or if you want real skies. But for fast paced renders, or I would say like a project, if it's fast paced, the day is a good one, is a good base for any kind of renders. And then you can come in here and you can edit your, I would say your settings that come with that day render effect that you have here. I always put 2 perspective on, and that's just because it feels better, feels more realistic. It helps put the two-point perspective in for your rendering so it doesn't feel as distorted when you're looking at it. And then our next one that is very crucial for us is color correction. The temperature and color correction is important. For us, I find which is a little, I would say is different, but something that's a little more warmer with the lighting is a lot more appealing. Usually you'll see that in residential, and maybe it comes from my residential background, which it could. But
No, but
instead
it
of it
is it
being,
is quite a subjective thing. Like some people
yeah,
prefer more of like a warm tone, and
yeah.
it's just personalized things.
Hmm. Yeah, and and the warmer light is just it's cozier, so it feels a little bit more cozier. And so we come in and we try to make sure we hit around. Usually, it's like 140 is like a good in between for our temperature when we're going in and doing some renderings. Just because sometimes our walls are either really white or some of the colors we use really bring in like blue tones or blue hues and grays, and so it feels very sterile. So when we're doing our renderings, the color correction temperature is really important for us. That is the first thing my mind goes to is, okay, let me adjust that to
Hmm.
make it a little bit warmer.
I think it also has to do with the fact that you're using day settings because days tend to be more blue hue than
Mhm.
red. So yeah,
Yep.
but it is quite interesting to learn that like that's where you kind of start from to like
Yep.
set the overall tone. Nice.
Yes. Yeah. Exposure is also another good one. So say if it's like you're not getting enough light and you're not wanting to spend time on putting lights within the space, but like say natural light, exposure sometimes helps as well. And this is like a quick just gives you a little bit of that more natural light that you need within the space without going through all of the sun settings and trying to kind of figure out your headings. Again, this is just it's our process on how we do our renderings really quickly, but in a really, I would say, good efficient way for our renderings. Um,
Question on that. Actually,
yeah.
so sometimes in a residential, not ideally, but some commercials, you literally get a black box, meaning no window. You get a very dark spaces to work with. Hopefully, one of your lobbies have some means of windows and natural light coming in. But
Mhm.
if you're working with literally a box without like much of a light that is natural light that you can utilize with, what do you usually do?
We usually put lights in. So lights are what we would go to. So say if it is a black box with no windows and it's we're relying on lights, I will put lights in. So let me go to build here. Move in. Um, So if you go down to your left bottom where it says lights, you'll click on your lights, and then you also have to make sure you're on place because you won't be able to see you won't be able to see any of your lights that you would like to place. Um, and so this is where you have your light library, and you have a lot of spotlights, which are good for, a lot of times you see these on pendants. I feel like you see some pendants that either have like a cone that isn't really translucent. You'll have your direct light, a directional light, or exterior storefront, or sorry, not storefronts, but exterior sconces are also good for these lights.
Hmm.
These are just good spotlights in general. So if you have a lot of like truss systems that have spotlights, these are also really good. Omni lights are good if you're, two-way lights are also good. We use these for sconces sometimes on our exterior. We don't really use these on interior. We don't do a lot of fancy lighting, but you can do a lot of really fun things with these lights. Um, and then area lights. So depending on the lights that you use, commercial lights, I feel like you always see your 2x2s or your,
Linear
um,
lights.
linear lights. Yeah, these are really easy and quick that you can add in here. Um, that you'll be able to add in
So do
and
you add to some of the fixtures that you already placed with SketchUp, and then just to light that up as a light, then you just place those things on top of there, right? Or below that?
yes. It would be below it, yeah. So if you have a very stylistic light that you want to show, it's a lot easier to just go ahead and build that in SketchUp and bring it in, and then you can manipulate this a bit with the width. So over here on the right, you can make it longer,
Hmm.
and then you can also make it wider. Which this feels a little backwards, the length and the width, but you'll be able to customize this a little bit more. So if you have a wider linear or a shorter one, you're able to really customize these. Um, Another thing, sometimes people, we don't like to see our light, like our light source. It's sometimes a little too harsh or it's a little distracting, and we really just want to see the I would say the
Space.
light. Yeah, like you just want to see it. You're able to just click it on and off. Right here, it'll say show source, which is your light source. If you don't want to see it, you can click it off and it'll still show your light that you have, so you can move it around. And I will go over here and make this. Let's make
Nighttime.
this nighttime. Make it dark a little bit. Go back here. My brightness. So we'll bring this up. Again, my body says let's make it warm. So we're going here. We'll change the color, so you can change the color of your light. So if you want to do a green light, you're more than welcome to do a green light. You can change your color. Typically we do a yellow. We try to get more of the 3K, 27K for the lights.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can adjust your brightness here,
Yeah,
which is
so
really
the
cool.
effect of a
And then
light is there, but you don't actually see the source of the light.
exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great. So then, you're able to see, you can move it around. You're also able to rotate it if you need to rotate it. So if you're really wanting more of, like, again, if you have spotlights that you're wanting.
To aim for a art piece or to a
Yep.
wall or some sort of track lights, perhaps that's
Mhm.
aimed at a
Yep.
specific area, then that's how you go about it.
Yep. Exactly. Cone lights are actually, you have like a few more additional settings that we like to use. I think those are on my exterior. So I'm going to go ahead and come back here and let me do a spotlight. I typically like, do this one. I'll just set them here. We'll move them up. I usually start with my light source so that I can kind of see where I'm placing him,
Mm.
especially in the daytime. If you're not in the daytime, you don't have to, or if you don't have a specific lamp that you want. But for this, you can adjust like the light radius, so how big your actual light will get. So you can make it larger this way, which is the light radius. But something that's really cool is the cone angle. You can make it more soft. So if you want it to be a little bit wider almost, you can. If you want it to be more harsh or more of a solid, you're able to do that with your cone angle. So if you're really like wanting to focus on one thing or emphasize one thing, these kind of cone lights or spotlights are really great for that,
Yep.
because they have a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, like a pin light versus like a little ambient light that's just shedding on the wall. You can control all of
Hmm.
that with an angle.
Yeah. And so, like, for our exterior, if we don't have any lights and it's like, okay, I want to show our signs that are lit at night, but we also want to show them the features of the storefront. This is where we'll come in and we'll place some. Well, I'll probably do this one. We'll place this guy. We'll come up. I'm gonna rotate him. Let's do 90. Oh, I did it in the wrong direction. Come up. Rotate
Yep.
this way. And then we'll just keep him far away and just make him super bright. And then I would add, probably, depending on the length of the store, like 3 to 4, spread them out pretty evenly. Let me move him. We'll go up a bit, and then I'll make them a little bit brighter so that you can get the nighttime feel where we can change one of our signs, and then light up the rest of it while it still feels like it's at nighttime.
Right,
And
right.
that's
So
really,
you get a little bit of illumination on your storefront, whereas it was like a complete darkness.
yep, yep, exactly. But it still feels at nighttime,
Did you press?
which kind of
Was it
brings,
a Alt or Control as you copy an element?
it was Alt.
Okay.
Alt is for Windows. So anytime, yeah, you want to copy, you'll click Alt and then come over and it'll duplicate for you.
Yep.
That took me a while because I used to be a Mac and having to go back and forth and adjust took me a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's really for our lights. Something else that's kind of, I mean, you might be able to do this in Inkscape, but we do a lot of emissive strengths. For retail design, we have
Sign, even
PVs where,
the signs too.
yeah, Yeah, even the signs, because, trying to like hide a light behind a sign to try to light up a sign and make it look face lit, is a little harder, to do. And so a quick way to do it is you can adjust the material. And so go into your material tab here and say, I have a TV in here so that we can see. I'll click on that material. I'll go up here to my settings and then down to my emissive strength down here in the bottom settings of it. And I can adjust that emissive strength to almost give it a glow so it feels like a screen, or just giving it the actual material a glow, versus like adding lights to it. It just gives it that realistic look of a screen, or a facelit sign, which is what we use consistently. And then you can get out. Let me show you. Let's just make this a nighttime.
I can tell you prepared this model a little bit. Thank you.
Just yes, just a little bit. Just to show you my little tricks we do I would say, like, because we're very fast paced. So stuff that we do, we think, and we have almost like a list of items in Lumion that we do quickly so we can get some renderings going for our designs. But yeah, emissive strength is one of our most used settings, because it's just very quick and easy for a lot of our signs and, say, our TVs. So if we have display TVs, it's very, very helpful for that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. I think the other main thing we usually do, so typically once we get our design, we set up our views, we set them up, we get all of our settings to where we like them to be. Sometimes when, I'm doing a view of like a lobby, and I say, let's go in here and I want to get a view from this perspective, but it's like, I just don't want to see, everything, or here. I don't want to see these walls. I just want to see this perspective of this kitchen. I'll go over here and I'll add an additional effect called the clipping plane.
Oh, I did not know about
Near, I guess,
this.
near clip plane. This is very useful for very small lobbies. So sometimes we get 200 square feet lobbies. That is really hard to get a perspective without walls being in the way. So we'll do near clip plane, and we'll add that in. And you'll have to kind of pivot between your view and then the actual setting of the near clip plane. But you can adjust it to where it starts to hide a little bit of your walls, so you can get a really nice view of hiding your walls. And so it's really helpful in small areas. We can move it out a little bit here, and you're able to really get a good view of whatever small corner,
That
small
reads
area.
well. Yeah, really well. That reads
Yeah.
really well.
So
Yeah.
like, yeah. So the further you're away, and then it's just it's a pivot between the two. Your view, you'll have to move your, front and back, side to side, and just kind of play with it depending on the model. But this, I would say I probably don't do a lobby rendering without this, because it's just so helpful on getting into those nooks and crannies, and, some of the features that we have is our details. This is so helpful for that.
Hmm. Well, yeah,
And
let me
then
take notes
always,
on that. Near clip plane.
yes,
That's
yes,
useful.
near clip plane. And then just always save the view. So you want to come back up here and store your camera if you're wanting to update your view,
Is
to go to
near
that.
clip plane dependent on your angle of the camera, or that's completely separate?
It's a little both. It's a little both. So let me go into here,
Because I see
sometimes
it's
near
trying
clip.
to cut a little bit, but then is it depending on the angle?
Well, yeah. So if you were to change here, your clip plane changes.
It
Uh,
rotates. Okay.
where is? Yes, yeah. So it rotates. So you can see it here. You're clipping it here, and if you're not wanting to see that clip, you'll have to adjust your clip plane there a
Okay.
little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So say I want to be like this far away from this room, but I don't. I need to see past this window. I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna clip this a bit there,
Okay.
so that I can get
So
further away
it's
from the door.
always rotating with the camera, but the
Hmm.
distance wise, it is starting from where I'm standing onwards.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Exactly.
Ah, interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, so you can, yeah, as you travel through, it starts to clip.
Right.
It'll continue to clip. But yeah, you'll start seeing like occasionally like the walls and stuff as you rotate if you're cutting into some
Yeah,
walls, you'll start
sometimes
to
you get
see.
like a little thing that is extending from like a side that doesn't make sense by itself. Like let's say
Yeah.
like you get a little lamp that is just clipping on a corner, and then you wonder what the heck is that? So like you just want to
Yes.
just get rid of that unless like
Yep.
you want to like you can pull it out to be recognized what it is.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
Um, Something that kind of just happened that I think is really helpful is when I saved this camera,
Mm-hmm.
it turned black. And that's because I actually did all of those settings in this view or in this camera.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I wanted that, here, let me go. Let's say if I wanted to save this view here, but all of my like it doesn't look like what I had here. It's because my effects aren't saved. Like it doesn't save the effects. So you have to come in and you'll copy your effects. You come in and you'll paste it and it'll bring all the effects that you had on your first one
Yep.
into that next one.
Nice.
Yeah. So that you can save that clipping plane. And then if you don't want it, you can hide it. If you don't want to, you can always hide all your effects in there. Um, yeah.
What's
So that's
your
really,
typical photo export settings look like?
yeah. Um, okay, we'll start with this one. So we'll go over here and we'll render the photo. And then I usually go to my photo set and just see like if I want all of them or if I want a few of them. So we'll just do this one. So what I do and what the team does usually is we just do it to desktop. It's usually a pretty good quality. It doesn't. Let me run down. We'll do 2019. And then I'll just save it
Takes.
as a JPEG and put it in here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty good. It's not, I mean, it's not blurry. It looks good. It doesn't take very long. That's also key. If it's something like a really big presentation or something that I'm wanting to like have really good high quality, then I'll look at the higher qualities. But the desktop is usually just perfect for us. Like it's nice and clean. You can see the details really easily.
Yeah. Well, two things that I do want to highlight that is like good thing about Lumion is one, it told you how long the render took, and it
Yes.
even notified when the rendering is done. I
Hmm.
like those aspects because often I hit rendering and just screen goes away, and I have no idea if whether that's saved, how long it took, and
Yes.
I like that about, and I don't Lumion did not notify you. It just stopped, and then it used to just stop and then show me how long it took to render, which is fine. But
Yeah.
I really like the fact that now it just like has a notification that it's done, and it's like saved, and it's like, okay, good, I got the confirmation.
Yes, it's that's so helpful because we can work on multiple projects and then I'll know. So because sometimes if depending like when we do videos, we can do movies
It takes
in
a long
here.
time.
It takes a little bit longer, and again, it depends on how big your model is and how many components you are, or how many components that you have in here. And it'll take a couple, yeah, it'll take a little bit longer, and so it's nice to know like that'll pop up because then you can usually bump back into that project and then either X out of Lumion because that also makes your computer run slow having Lumion on. So you can either it'll notify you, and you'll be able to jump out of it or start doing your next project, which is nice.
Yep. And you could be doing the photo set as you were saying, and when you're done
Hmm.
exporting all
Yep.
the photo sets, it'll notify you.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And then I don't know if you are aware of the movies. I don't know if this used to be a thing years ago. But being able to,
Yeah, yeah, it
I
used to be a
don't,
thing, yeah, but they
okay.
added a couple more features I'm aware of, but I'm happy
Yeah.
for you to give us a little pre-run.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the again for our workflow and just kind of how we use it, we just do the typical record. It's very fast and it gets us what we need. So any kind of marketing moment, our marketing team usually reach out and wants like a quick video that they can promote before this like a store opens that
For
we're doing.
social media shots.
Yes. And so, you kind of you think, we'll ask, like, okay, what's the most important thing? Like, do you want to be close? Do you want to be far away? And we'll, to me, I'm thinking we'll start here. So we'll go here at this angle and I'll go ahead and just add that keyframe. And then I will, I'm thinking I would love a front face view of this. We'll come in, maybe add one here. And then we can end over to the side here and we'll go there. And then we can play it and it'll show you and it'll go through very quickly. Very easy, simple. You've got a nice view. You can make it slower. We can make it faster. So if you're like, oh, this is too fast, I want to showcase it a little bit more. You can mess with your time over here, make it slower, make it faster, however fast you want it. And then you can render it the same way. So you have your small HD, full HD. Typically, I do HD. It's kind of in the middle.
Hmm.
And
Doesn't take too
then
long.
output quality, yeah. I usually do like the half quality, 50%. Again, it still looks good. Depending on how big your model is and how many details you have, what typically we do is we'll render it and then look at it. And sometimes we have to kind of update the quality a little bit if we need to do full HD, depending on the details that we have.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. But that's like that my typical workflow that we do. It's usually we're able to work very efficiently with those key aspects of Lumion. There's a lot more. I mean, there is so much more. You can really get into the nitty gritty when it comes to the effects. There's a lot of fun effects. Like if you're wanting to be more like stylistic and have like enhancements to it, Bloom is one that I really like to use. I don't use it a lot, but sometimes if I'm feeling like fun and I want to give it a little something,
Like
I'll
a
come in and give
highlight,
it
kind of
almost like a.
dreamy look.
Mhm. Yes, yeah. And then you can adjust it. If I guess another feature is if you're wanting to build within the effect, you also have that option. So sometimes it kind of gets a pain to go back and forth and keep clicking this to refresh it. You can work up here with the effects and work in it and do updates within the effect. So if it's daytime, nighttime, you can work in that effect if you need to make it quicker.
Yep. Do you ever use
Um,
God rays?
no,
That
no, what is that?
I thought that was in here. But that used to be a thing for like a really big shopping malls where it's like really grand space with lots of skylights. Then you want to have like highlights of rays of light that is just coming in space, looking all peaceful and grandeur sort of thing.
I could see that. Is it like an effect?
Yeah, I
Do you
thought it was an.
have it?
I,
Is
I
it like
thought
an
it was a
occurring?
effect.
Is it what's it called? I can probably search it and see.
Search light because I don't know if it was a God ray. There you
Oh
go.
yeah.
God rays. Yep.
Yeah. No, and a lot of our designs we don't have skylights.
I know, but
So
like
I would
that's
yeah.
something that I used to utilize a lot in like shopping centers, like a big shopping
Yeah.
center in a
You can see
big
it here.
open space. You want to have like these God rays that are coming in, perhaps not shooting from like a kitchen window, but
Yeah. I'm like looking at this here. Let me turn this bloom off.
that's
There we go.
that's just hilarious. But yeah,
Yeah. Yes, I can see this working really well in like big mall commercial designs. Absolutely, when they have like big. Oh, see, yeah, there we go. Just the intensity of them.
yeah. When you're trying to
Yeah.
like blur out the background of outside and
Hmm.
you want to focus on inside, that's also what you can kind of do.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I feel like that's really our main workflow. Those are our key things that we use to keep our projects going every year.
Yeah.
Renderings, movies, effects. We mess with effects. that we showed. Sometimes like windows, that's also, sometimes they get too reflective. Um,
Mirror like.
yeah, so we, we have to go in and adjust. Let me turn this off here, and turn my NAR clipping plane on. So coming in here and, if I'm seeing too much reflection and not enough, like maybe inside, because sometimes we like to showcase our lobby through our storefront a little bit, and we don't really get that. A lot of times it's like if we have a space that's inside a mall, if you get any kind of like lighting, like we try to enclose it, you get a lot of like effects on the window. If you have just like a white background or anything like that, it's just too hard to see in. So we come in, and this is when you can mess with the setting of that material you brought in, and you can come over and mess with your reflectivity, and you can bring it down so it's not as, I would say,
Reflective.
white.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah.
Cool.
Any, yeah. Do you have any other questions?
Um, no, I've been asking a lot of questions along the way,
Yeah.
so I think you have satisfied all of them.
Yes.
I mean, I
Yeah.
do understand we just graced the surface of what Lumion is capable of, and
Yes.
you've only mainly showcased how to import the model into Lumion and working with it, because I know there's at least two other methods of working with the model. So we can
Mhm.
certainly leave that out for future sessions where we talk about some other methods to take things into Lumion. And we only touched on how to bring things from SketchUp side, but it may be another type of modeler or a different type of geometry, how we work with that kind of things. And, our channel is always open for different type of renderer, that sort of thing. And it will be also worth having a look from your point of view of like I showcase something, say InVision or Enscape, that sort of thing, and have you just kind of take a look at, okay, those are features that we have, what we don't have on Lumion side, and how those things just kind of compare. I think those would be quite interesting topics to cover in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, there's just so much to Lumion. It's like hard to, it's like, where do you even want to start? Because there's so much.
Right. But I think it's important that you just kind of have this quick, simple workflow that can get rendering done quickly, and which is quite important in at least yours and my industry, or the field that we work in. And whilst, yes, the capacity to bring it into a completely next level to make it more realistic or with all of these great effects, but it is also suitable for creating concepts, and so that you can just quickly go and have landlord's approval, your
Mhm.
tenant's approval, your whomever approval quickly. And I think that is a very important aspect in my day to day, especially. So
Yeah,
it's good
absolutely.
to learn that aspect. And I think we have passed our planned time. So unfortunately, we're going to have to do a bit of a closure here and continue our session later in future with along with the future topics. So um, yeah, Autumn, it was first time for you to be on a show. I hope that we can do some more co-hosting and have you on future sessions. So at least that's the plan for now. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for showing us your workflow and willing to come on board and share about some of the knowledge that you have. It's
Absolutely.
great to have you on the show, and we hope to do more, many more of this. And
Yes.
I think that is it for today's session. So what I'll do is I'll just run an outro as always, and we'll see you everybody perhaps next week. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.
That's it. Yeah, it so I figured out I couldn't